Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday hosted by California State University Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. Good afternoon, I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the SBDC here in Bakersfield. And also I am your moderator for today's webinar. We got a great topic to go through, very timely as always, cybersecurity. A lot of things going on. This is Managing Your Small Business Beyond the Pandemic webinar series, our 133rd in a series of weekly live Wednesday webinars since the pandemic began back in March of 2020. Got great guests. I'll introduce them in just a little bit. We'll get through some of the information that's going on. So what's up today, September 28th, 2022? Well, we have the Capital Summit coming, one of our biannual now Capital Summits, which has dozens of funding options. We'll talk a little bit about the upcoming Capital Summit, our Eastern Sierra Capital Summit, which is going to be both live in Bishop, California on October 7th, and also over webcast. So it'll be an online hybrid option for you. We have the state Small Business Credit Initiative rolling out soon. Yes. We have talked about that most of this year as part of the stimulus program, part of ARPA from last year. So about a year and a half ago, this program started and it is rolling out now. So information coming forth on it. And also up today, we're going to be talking about the online threats faced by both businesses and individuals, cybersecurity best practices, and how to reduce the risk of ransomware and other challenges. So we'll have our presentation coming up on that shortly. Our economic corner is kind of focused this week on not all the fun issues of potential recession and inflation, but just kind of is looking at the federal budget as Congress tries to wrangle a federal budget out before the end of this federal fiscal year, which ends Friday, September 30th. And of course, you know, that economic corner, the federal budget, affects a few of our speakers that are hoping to come to the Capital Summit from SBA and USDA. So we're looking for a resolution there. We're going to have an update on some of our pandemic era programs. A program also EIDL, the EIDL loan, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, the COVID EIDL. Payments are now coming due. We'll look at that real quick. Our marketing moment with Maureen is no longer a maybe. It is a definite, certain. And as always, we'll have your questions, and eventually, Zoom permitting, we will have a poll. And oh, here it comes right now. Great. So our poll question today, our very first question of two, is going to be based on commodity prices. If you were on last week, we talked about the largest item that reduced in price over the last, say, year. With all inflation going on, we talked about oil going up 68%, and cell phones actually went down. Smartphones were down 20% over the last year. So this is kind of along that line. It's what commodity price that soared during the pandemic, increased prices dramatically, has now returned to pre-COVID price levels. So some more good news on inflation is the three choices are lumber, oil, or gold. So what we're looking for right now is what commodity price that went up dramatically during the pandemic has now actually dropped to its pre-COVID level. Your choices are lumber, oil, and gold. So here's your chance to jump in. We're already up to 61% of you participating. We'll give you another couple of moments to jump in, and we will end the poll and share the results with you to the question of which commodity price that soared during the pandemic has now returned to pre-COVID levels. Choices of lumber, oil, and gold. Last call, and we are going to close the poll right now and share the results with you. And with 71% of you participating, thanks for your participating, you selected gold, which was a common selection earlier when I asked that question. 47% of you say gold, 40% of you say lumber, 13% say oil. Yeah, we still have to show up at the gas pump. So yeah, oil, where it has been declining, is not the correct answer. The correct answer is lumber. Lumber prices, those $8 2x4s during the pandemic, are gone. So 40% of you correctly identified lumber. Thank you for participating in that poll. And let's jump to our second question. And it has to do, what is your greatest cybersecurity fear? So in line with our presenters today on cybersecurity, what is your greatest cybersecurity fear? Is it ransomware? Is it hacking into your financial information? Is it stolen secrets? Could be trade secrets, email, or personnel information. Or if you have another fear, please go to the chat box and put it in there. And we'll try to remember to look at that. But what is your greatest cybersecurity fear? Is it ransomware? Is it somebody hacking your financial information? Or is it stolen secrets such as trade secrets, emails, or personnel information? So we will give you just a few more moments. We have 54% of you in. To the question is, what is your greatest cybersecurity fear? Ransomware, hacking into financial information, or stolen secrets? Okay, 54% of you, 59. I love that 60% number, and we hit it. So let's end the poll and let's share the results with you. And you say that 43% are most concerned about someone hacking into your financial information, possibly stealing some of your assets or resources, while ransomware is a close second at 36%, and 21% stolen secrets as far as trade, email, or personnel information. So thank you for providing that. Let's close our poll and let's move along. So what is up today? One thing that's up, as we mentioned, is the Capital Summit coming. And the Capital Summit, an event that's going to be co-sponsored by presenting sponsors Alta One Credit Union and Sunstone Capital, will provide a variety of different presenters and information. And so again, this is a hybrid event. It is both in person in Bishop, California at the Sierra Costa Community campus. And also it is going to be online. So whereas we have limited space of about 60 to participate live in the event, we will be doing a live free webcast. And a lot of the information that's going to be provided there is going to be to rural programs that kind of translate very well over our entire 13 county area of the Central California region. So if you're thinking, gee, you know, we're going to be talking about the Bishop Loan Fund and things like that, it's going to be dozens of loan and other financing capital options. So sign up at either of these two places. You can sign up for the Zoom online, and Maureen is adding that to the chat box. You can go in and snag that. So it is the Zoom opportunity, or if you want to sign up in person, please sign up there. A little bit more about the Capital Summit. You know, I was asked recently, what is the Capital Summit? And, you know, it's kind of like the pinnacle, the highest point of where you can actually get capital or get other financial resources for your business. And that's dozens of financial opportunities that we'll talk about. Our 10 speakers will talk about literally dozens of financial opportunities that are available for new and existing businesses with loan programs from as little as $5,000 up to $10 million or more. There are new programs coming on to assist both starts and expansions. We've talked so much about the Small Business Credit Initiative that is coming, and it is going to be discussed there with representatives from the entities. We'll have more equity programs from angel investors to underserved venture capital. We'll have alternative sources of funding. Talk a little bit about fintech, hard money, and many other resources that might be available to you that you had not thought of. Microloans, some of those are going to be based on credit score and other reduced underwriting criteria. Financial programs that you have never heard of will be at the Capital Summit. And then we'll provide you access to the lenders if you're there in person, or also contact information to email if you're on the webcast, and get you free assistance through the SBDC, through our 6 centers throughout Central California to assist you get that project done. So that's the Capital Summit. Finally, we're going to be talking about the US Treasury's $10 billion Small Business Credit Initiative, and it's finally coming to the state of California, about $1 billion. So a lot of different programs for that. We'll get our first look at that through the California Pollution Control Financing Authority, who will be president of the summit. And also interesting is going to be their collateral support program, which I am really looking forward to learning more about. So some of our other programs that we have that are out there, we have the California Dream Fund. You can email interest to SBDC at csub.edu. We have EIDL loans that are now becoming due. So if you did receive one of the economic injury disaster loans for COVID-19, your 30-month deferment is coming to an end. The California Microgrant Program here in Kern County is open, and we have time and money available for you if you can qualify with that simple one-page application. Mono County Grant and Forgivable Loan Program is open. Maybe we'll get a quick update on that next week as well at the summit. But also the Employee Retention Credit and the California Performing Arts Grant Program are open as well. So a little quick update on the COVID-19. As I mentioned, the repayment begins soon for many recipients. Remember that the disaster loan proceeds are not forgivable. So whereas we had several forgivable loans and other programs, the disaster loan was that 30-year 3.75% interest, and it does need to be repaid. You're going to want to start with the available information that's in the SBA Capital Access Financial System, or CAFS. And there's the website to log into to set up an account. And then you would be submitting your payments to www.pay.gov. I want to have more on this coming up because it's a lot of people are going to have questions as we kind of move forward to these loans starting to be repaid. And we want to make sure that everyone gets information. So we'll have more information coming up with this after the summit. Also, since we are talking about cyber theft and cybersecurity, identity theft, one of the things that wasn't one of your poll question answers, but we did find that there was some COVID-19 EIDL identity theft where people would put in a business name and location and false information, and then the contact information, and likely the check went to somebody else. Some theft happened there. So the thief made off, and if that happened to you, whereas we did see about a handful of these over the last, 6 months or so, 12 months or longer, we might be seeing more now that those payments are becoming due. So if there was a identity theft, there's the email address that you're going to want to report that to, or you can call the SBA Fresno District Office. And also the SBA has an Inspector General, and the Inspector General hotline for anything that could be from fraud or waste or theft can also be accessed at that 800-767-0385. Timely with the topic being cybersecurity today. So did mention our economic corner today, very brief in the slew of, not all great economic news, or actually pretty crappy economic news. It's good to know that hopefully we'll get something resolved with the federal budget, and that also lumber prices are down. Hey. So one other thing, just to invite you, if you're so inclined, we like to talk about advocacy, and who does advocacy at the state of California? Well, that would be the Office of the Small Business Advocate. And the Small Business Advocate, Tara Lynn Graves, is holding a special kind of virtual open house, and she's going to discuss many of the programs that are available in California. But it's really an opportunity for you, if you have questions on any of these state issues that are affecting your business, to join and to bring those up with the Small Business Advocate. So again, there's where you would register for this event. And now it's time for our marketing moment with our marketing maven, Maureen. So Maureen, take it away, please.
You got it, Kelly. All right, let's get going here. So what we're going to talk about today is QR codes. If I can get this going, here we go. So I had lunch recently with friend of mine. It was at a chain restaurant, so I don't want anybody to think it was a local restaurant. And so when the waitress came to our table, we're expecting to see a menu, right? And the waitress told us that we had to use the QR code that she had to look up the menu on our phones. And my companion across the table from me, who's, you know, in her upper 60s or so, her jaw just about dropped. And she said, well, don't you have a single sheet of paper? And so this waitress we had was lovely, and she was really smart. She had memorized the entire menu, if you can believe that. I don't think she could tell us the prices on stuff, but she did a really good job of running down the menu. And apparently the management at that restaurant had recently made this change without thinking about who their target markets were, because they have different categories, right? You break it down between age ranges. Well, my companion and I were in a different range than what like my children are, and they're in their 30s. My daughters are constantly using QR codes for everything, or using their phones to, you know, get sales and look up stuff and all that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, we got through it, but what my companion was telling me was that she was frustrated at, first of all, she never uses them. She doesn't know how to use them. She's lucky to be able to use her cell phone very much. And she thought it was something that was social between whoever she's sitting there having her meal with. So in addition to QR codes, I want you to think of who your target markets are and how likely they are to use certain things. In this case, my theory with that was, I'll bet, you know, the older you have someone who is in your target market, the less likely they are probably to use a QR code. So moving right along with my experiences over the last few weeks. So last weekend, I went over to the beach with my BFFs, Elaine and Linda, and we were getting gas. And I'm sitting there looking across the way, and it's like, okay, so it's not big enough to explain all the value you get with Arco gas, but those little squares. Well, everybody I saw pulling in for gas, I can tell you they were, at least for the 10 minutes we were there, were at least 45 plus. Now, and I don't know anybody, so this was good for me and it was a beautiful day, as you can see in the background there. So I thought, all right, I want to kind of see what the age breakdown is. So I got online today. Thank you for Dr. Google. And you can see how this breaks out down here where the purple and red are. And indeed, you know, so the older the consumer is, the less likely they are to like or use QR codes. Now, the QR codes are not going to go away anytime soon. In fact, they're going to be, you know, increasing for how much they're used. But if you look at this here, you know, so if you look at the purple, and here's the age range over here, see how so it's very easy and somewhat easy. Look at how much more real estate that takes up, starting here with 18 to 29-year-olds, all the way to the 65 plus. So think in terms of, like I said, those age ranges for your target markets. And if you're not using them, consider it. Canva is one of the many places that you can go and make all kinds of, you know, flyers, invitations, you name it, and it'll actually create a QR code for you. And then you can have both your text version of it, whether it's print or email, and then you can also have the QR code version of it, so you can hit all of your target markets. And so then my other experience within the last 2 weeks, yes, I'm not kidding here, is that I got a jury summons, which I just, like 5 minutes ago before this started, I got a notice saying that that I was excused because I'm a sole proprietor. Anyway, the courts in Kern County did the great thing here. They've got your QR code, as you can see, but they also had, which is what I used because I was at my computer, the website where I could go to. So they covered both angles. And I thought that was a really good thing to do. If you're going to use a QR code, also make sure that people can read it, you know, go to a website or whatever. So that's our marketing moment for this week, Kelly. You can take it back.
Well, fantastic. Well, my gripe is with QR codes is when my phone's dead. What do I do?
Yeah, that sucks.
So, and my phone likes to die. I don't know why, it just does. Okay, you can go to YouTube and see some of our past webinars. We highlight many of our, and oh look, there's one with Bill Britton from back in April when he was here last. And some of the other ones that are very popular on our YouTube channel, you'll find all 133 of this webinar series, except for the 2 this guy forgot to record. So anyway, today's special guest, honored to have 2 experts in the field of cybersecurity. First is Bill Britton. He's the CIO and Vice President of Information Technology, and he's the Director of the California Cybersecurity Institute at Cal Poly. Over 30 years experience in IT leadership, cybersecurity, space, and defense. He was first introduced to cybersecurity in his 20-year career as an intelligence officer and electronic warfare officer in the U.S. Air Force. And he's going to be joined today because, you know, why not just double down? This is such an important topic. He's joined by Henry Danielson, and he's the technical advisor at the CCI. And he has expert in cybersecurity computer systems, holds several cybersecurity certificates, also is the IT director at Coast Unified School District. Sounds like a great place to go to school. Bill, Henry, thank you for joining us, and take it away, please.
All right. Very excited to be here today. Go ahead, Bill. Open her up.
Kelly. Do appreciate it, the introduction. Last time we were here, we did a kind of a generic overview of cybersecurity, what to be thinking about, what to be concerned about. And today, what we're going to try to do is approach it a little bit more from the how do you do, what do you do, how should I do perspective. That is really the what about us in the small business arena? What do we do to protect ourselves? And so we're really going to try to take a deeper look at 4 categories of support you should be really thinking about, some practical application, and we're going to try to rifle through all this. If you have questions, please jot them down, put them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. We've got a lot of material to cover. So the first thing that we want to cover here is really about, I called it last time, really a consumer awareness of what's going on in the internet around you, also known as cyber posture. So what's your cyber posture? In other words, what do you know about the world of digital information going on around you? In that means connectivity to the internet, your computer, your cell phone, all of those things that you're doing some kind of business transaction on. So we'll talk about posture. What are you trying to protect? One of the most important questions that you can answer to what you need to do to spend money. So there's a simple equation I like small business to think about. How expensive would it be if someone stole your information? That should equal what you think you should pay to protect it. So if you're trying to make that trade-off analysis of how much do I spend, where do I spend, and all that, think about what would happen if, then drive that to be your question. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And we'll also try to talk about developing a really good preventative plan for cybersecurity, so that what we do is we'll really try to leave you in a better situation than what we started off with here today. So business cyber. So there's a definition. Now, rather than read it, I know you can read it, but it's really the awareness you have of your connectivity to the net and how you do business on the network, on the internet, and how you transact information. That could be personal information, social information. It could be any of those things that can tie to your relevance in your job, your business, and what you're trying to do. Now, this is where people start to really begin to not connect, and we want to connect these dots for you today. But it's about human behaviors, what you say and do on the internet. Surprisingly enough, not many people think that I'm going to advertise my management team for my website. And then you have all these personal sites that you have attached to it, like Facebook, Instagram, and other things. Don't think the bad actor out there doesn't go looking for you on those social sites as a targeting element. So there's IT infrastructure, software, hardware, and the systems that you use. So really the first step in evaluating your cybersecurity posture is identifying what your business is, how much transactional does it do online, where do you store your information, and how do you get people to your storefront? So an interesting data point, one of the things that was mentioned in the pre-survey, the one I would be concerned about if I were in your shoes is denial of service. If I can't do transactional support across the internet, across the wires, across any of those things, will that hurt my business? And there's this protocol called denial of service where they just stop you from being able to do business. And we've seen a lot of MFA, multi-factor authentication hacking, be around that denial of service, which causes frustration. The frustration causes missteps. So with that, let's talk about now the business cycle. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Henry and let him talk to you about this.
All right, thanks, Bill. So excited to be here today. Woohoo! Hopefully you're getting your cyber sniglets out today and learning a little bit from us. And thanks for the opportunity. We're honored to be here. So the first thing I want to talk about is what we like to call the business cyber cycle, right? You have to have a cycle and start to identify some of those items that are in the cycle and what's really necessary. So beginning, you have to protect, right? And you can see this wheel. Then it goes to detect, then respond, then recover, and then identify. So one of the things that as we go through this today, we're going to talk about those about the cycle and what we suggest and recommend. But protecting your organization really includes some wonderful things because your business has what we call data assets, data and business assets. And all of those items need to be secured. And what do I mean by secured is making sure that threat actors or other, bad people can't get to them. And this is the first step in identifying. You want to make sure that you're identifying your data and your business assets. You have to be able to stand up and say, okay, here's my organization. What are my crown jewels? What exactly am I actually doing?
Yeah, Henry, it's really cool. I don't recommend doing it on your computer. I recommend getting a piece of paper and writing down all your assets, because then you shred that piece of paper when you're done. But really looking at every way you do business, what your commodity is that you're selling, and then how those two things connect together and making that list. And that's really where you start to identify. And now you can find some of those weak links. So that kind of leads to the risk analysis, which Henry, I'm going to let you talk about risk analysis as well.
Okay. Go there. So listing your assets. So risk analysis is basically trying to come up with, hey, what am I at risk for? Your personal identifiable information, your PII, but listing your assets, okay, is the first thing that you want to find. And we talked about that just a second ago with Bill saying, hey, here's some papers. These are the things you should write down on a piece of paper. And then after you have it done with your group, or your company's meeting, a large meeting, and talking about them. What are you protecting? What are those assets? Then you want to talk about your asset threat, right? And then you can see in the chart here, we have threat, vulnerability, asset and consequence, risk, and then the solution. So the third step is your asset vulnerabilities, right? So one of the things I always like to think about too is if you have a server in a specific area, what if the room gets flooded? Do you have a cloud backup? Are you using some kind of redundancy to think about that? That's just an example. Also, your asset, your consequences, right? Your servers, all services, you want to find out what's critical and list what's low, moderate, very low, and what's high. What are these problems that could create something very big and stop your organization from actually running? And then your asset risk near the end here is actually talking about, the potential loss. What could happen if your website goes down? We talked about denial of service. If your website is down, and no one is able to buy certain things, that's a problem and you're losing money really quickly. And then lastly, finding that solution. Maybe you have to, for my example, make sure that you have redundancy going on. So if you do have a flood or something happens in your room where there's a server, that you have something, and you're also doing maintenance on your air conditioning. Put that in your plan of action. So those are the things you should start thinking about with risk analysis.
And Henry, a lot of small businesses kind of outsource some of their internet connectivity, such as Spectrum Business and others. Nothing stops you as the owner manager of your business from creating this sheet and working with your provider to answer your questions and make you feel comfortable about what they're doing to protect your system as well. So this is really kind of a proactive approach to you taking charge and working with those things that you're worried about that might give access to your information. So here's another list of examples that Henry's put together. So Henry, go ahead and explain.
Yeah, so I want to identify a few of the examples. Small businesses list of data, business assets, and what is most vulnerable. So right away, one of the first things I do, and one of the jobs that I do on the side as a social engineer, is try to physically pen test buildings. Walk in, see if I can get in and do some bad stuff. And then I write a report for them and tell them, hey, by the way, this is something that you should do to protect yourself. So number one, your front desk computer, your administrative person, that the first person you see when you come in there. It also could be a point of sale system, right? These are really, really, really vulnerable. Why? I could pretend to be someone, come in, be part of the IT staff, and come in and say, hey, I have to check your outlets. I come under the desk, I put something under there. I just commandeered some of your stuff. Another one that's really critical is your Wi-Fi router and your router. These are things you have to use and protect on an updated basis on a regular basis. Why? Great question. Thanks for asking. Because Wi-Fi routers and these technical devices are usually consumables. And what I mean by consumables is they are ready to be repaired. No, you need to buy a new one probably every 3 to 4 years. Why? Because at some point they become end of life and they're not able to be updated. If I were you today, anybody in this Zoom, flip over your router, see if it's updated, see how old it is, and purchase a new one. And I'm not trying to get you to spend money, but it's more risk for you if you don't have updated software as well as hardware.
Yeah, newer systems have more security built in than the old ones. And Henry and I can both prove to you that the older router systems have no security built in. And oh, by the way, use those passwords on those systems and change them regularly.
Absolutely. So number 3, I'll zip through these. Finance, your billing software access, right? If I get access to social security number, people's addresses, all that type of stuff, I could revert or divert the financing and billing to maybe me to commandeer some of those checks or do different things. So finance billing software is really, really critical. Your personal information, employee and customer, these are also databases, hugely always getting breached. If you look in the news on a daily basis, employee and customer data is constantly being jacked, and it's not good. Uber, from Target, all the way down the line. And again, your intellectual property, right? That's something maybe you have as a small business. Maybe you design small satellites and you have very, very cool stuff that you don't want to share with the rest of the world because what you've designed is your own intellectual property. You have to make sure that you save that stuff and secure it. Your inventory system, right? If people find out how much you have, maybe it could just be a simple rob. But if that's not protected and secured, people could be able to do that. And your cloud infrastructure, everyone thinks, oh, cloud's very much secure. Well, you have to put those parameters in place. A lot of the cloud starts, but you do have to do some of the managing. And last of all, the communication system, your email, your telephone, and your laptop. All 3 of those are what I call major targets, especially with small businesses.
All right, so the slide is a little directive in nature because we're so emphatic on this. What we're trying to say here is much like those who live in a fire area, build a fire escape plan, what to do if fire comes into our region. They build a house plan, they build a personal protection plan, all of those things. We're suggesting the same thing should occur if you're doing business on, around, near the internet. Then you need to have a protection plan on what you're going to do. And that plan is not just how to protect, it's also what do I do if something happens? And this is something that we at the university practice quite often, which is the worst has occurred, now what? Because it's when that now what occurs, when you really begin to see things dismantle quickly. And if you can't do business and you can't connect and you can't do point of sale, you can't make the money necessary to retain and sustain your business. So it's really important that this plan be comprehensive, start to finish, and it does a worst case analysis of what's going to happen to me if I do this. And if I don't do this, what protections do I have out there? So with that, what we're suggesting is you're creating this awareness that is a cybersecurity culture, that is people understanding their transactions. I can't tell you the number of times I've been into a winery in a local area and every employee has the same password to the main system that they're using. That's a normal thing for people to do because they don't want to have individual passwords for everybody. That is the worst policy you could have. It is so non-supportable because it is going to be a mistake. It is going to be something that happens. So let's talk a little bit more about that protective plan here, Henry.
Yeah, so your protective and preventive plan also is your password security. And I always like to talk a little bit about, maybe this is a simple one, but the way that password cracking and hacking works is it uses special software to, brute force or use dictionary attacks. But one of the cool things is if you use the space bar as one of your characters, that really makes it difficult for the password cracking mechanism to actually find it. So I always suggest, number one, if anything you take away today, use the space bar as one of your password choices. Another thing is use a long password, 25 characters, that is a phrase. Sammy likes elves seeing the seashore running wild. Something like that, because it takes a really long time for password crackers to put multiple words together. Random words that don't mean anything is also a good plan. Also, MFA or multi-factor authentication, really just turn it on. Is it a pain in the keister? Absolutely, but it's really worth your time. Anybody using Gmail, you should have that turned on, please. I'm hacking Gmail on a regular basis because people don't do that. So
Henry, now's a good time
on.
to kind of point out, because you said it already, is anything that you do to slow down the hacker's access to your account. It could be the space bar, the VPN, 27 letters instead of 25. Any of those things that creates an extra effort on their part, they're going to go elsewhere where it's easier to get in. So those who aren't doing anything and don't have a cybersecurity plan around their business, you're the target they're looking for. And when you say, now, wait a minute, why would they want just my little old stuff? I may only have 200 customers. Remember, hackers, bad actors are using the cloud to their benefit. They store your data and they resell it. And they may resell it as many as 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 times. So what looks to you like only a list of 250, multiply that times 10 to 10,000 times for that individual to resell that information. So it's really a game of utilizing this cloud computing both for us and against us. Go ahead, Henry.
And the last part is VPN, a virtual private network. Basically clouds and does not allow your identity or IP address to be known. I don't know why the whole world doesn't use VPN right now. It's very inexpensive, about $60 for 5 to 6 devices. I highly suggest you investigate that and use a VPN, especially in large metropolitan areas where you're going to an airport or other places like that. And I also want to just mention, as of yesterday, Bank of America just recently sent a customer service email to watch out for a new phishing attack where they're using realistic text saying that as payment due for a fraudulent alert from Zelle, which is a mobile financial transfer of monies. So right now there's a huge one out there. Don't fall for it. If you have Bank of America, please check out and read a little bit about that. Next slide.
You're there.
So also protective fraud and scams, and just opening up with that, increase awareness for anybody. If you hear about what I just talked about, Bank of America, one of the threats that's out there today, make sure you tell someone in a family. They'll tell someone, they'll tell someone. If you have friends that are using some of those things, go to it and just actually think about it before you do it. Be very, very reticent about actually opening any text. Smishing right now or text fraudulent is really, really, really on the rise. Increase awareness. Again, talk about it with your family and community. Try to find out what scammer tactics are. Right now, older Americans and retired Americans are getting hammered because they fall for a simple call that says, hey, I'm your so-and-so, and they never double check anything. If you really, really are that, if they're that urgent about it, tell them, give me your phone number, I'll call you back, and I'm going to go call you back. And then people usually stop that. So if there's any urgency about that, make sure that you're double checking about that. Elder abuse right now is really, really on the high.
Yeah, one of the big ones that's going on right now, and it's really hitting marketplaces, is this brute force multi-factor authentication denial of service effect. And basically what's going on is that they're calling it MFA bombing. So if you heard that term, what that means is multi-factor authentication is being repeatedly hit until the individual just can't do business, and they give in to the hacker and say, yeah, okay, I'll accept your multi-factor challenge. When you do that, you're actually giving them your multi-factor authentication, which means they can now get into your account also. So one of the best things to do for that, and I think Henry will give a better explanation, but from my perspective is, whatever medium they're coming into you on, turn it off. Don't deal with the multi-factor authentication bombing. You will not win. They are being persistent for a reason. Henry, you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, and I think Uber had that happen to them as well, and it's not good. And these are powerful hackers that have a business that are very, very in tune on getting around any type of multi-factor authentication. So you just have to use multiple different ways to be able to protect and what you can, and you won't be able to fight them. They will get through there, but it is attracting notable attention.
So one of the things that people talk about, and you'll hear a lot of people say it, we don't need to use passwords anymore. Henry and I would tell you, bogus, unless you're spending $1 billion on security systems, that password is more protective than ever. But be smart about it. So Henry's going to tell you more about how to be smart about that password.
Yeah, you need to boost your password complexity, first of all. And like I said, using a very long phrase, using the space bar, using multiple words with punctuation. If the system supports it, a lot of times they're saying you can't use special characters, but that's changing as we have found we need more. The algorithms and the computers that hackers have built to be able to brute force and actually crack passwords is very, very fast. So the longer you make it and the harder for them to get in, it's going to work. The system supports it again using your space. Include a different passwords as well. Using a password manager, very easy to do. And I know some of you thinking, hey, Henry, what if the password manager gets cracked? Yes, that is a possibility, but it's better than you having it underneath your keyboard. As an IT professional, I still walk around and I lift up keyboards and I still find passwords on a regular basis. So 27, 25 characters, mix them, and reasonable to remember, right? You want to use a password manager if you can, as well as try not to do and remember them all. Why? Because humans, we are pattern-seeking organisms, but our brains can't hold more than 3 to 4 passwords. Our brains aren't meant to hold that level of complexity. So it's really hard for us to do.
So right now, what we're going to talk about is an area that I think that there are very few people who are really not affected by this one. If you live out in the middle of nowhere and you have a cell phone, I'm not sure how you're on the Zoom to begin with. So that's kind of the premise that we're getting at. What we also know is that the phone is one of the easiest areas for that initial entry into your system, because we tie them to our work emails, we tie them to our work systems, we buy them for work, they all enter in. And so protecting your phone becomes really, really critical. We've done numerous sit downs with sessions with people in groups in person and gone through the iPhone with the people in the audience to help them protect their iPhone. So Henry's going to talk to you about a couple of things in particular that you really should be looking for in that phone.
Yeah, first of all, you need it's encrypted, right? Currently the iPhone is, and the Android has it, but you have to do a couple steps. So encryption enabled, that means when your phone is turned off, it is not able to get any data. Keep your phone locked. Why? If you set it down in an Uber and the Uber drives off and you forget it and someone gets it and it's not locked, they have keys to the castle. I like to call phones a snitch in your pocket. The amount of data that's actually on your phone is really, really immense. Another thing, hide your notifications, limit the amount of information anyone can see from when you're just doing it. Lock your SIM card. They actually made the newest iPhone what's called an eSIM card. So they're getting around the hackers actually just doing what's called SIM jacking or hijacking your SIM. So that's going away as we try to figure out this. But what you can do is call your cell phone provider and basically say, hey, put on 2 pieces of information in order to unlock my SIM. Very easy, they'll do it, and you'll have it extra protection on it. Lock down your accounts with strong passwords, 2-factor authentication, using unique passwords that we talked about. Protect your service account, right? Check with your provider's website. If you're using AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, whatever it is, go to them and make sure, how much protection do I have if someone tries to SIM jack me? And if they say, oh, we just have this, say, I want added protection. I want it to be that I have to go into the store only by human and show identification to be able to change that. And they'll put that on your actual, a note, and you'll be fine. List your important accounts that are really need to be checked and secured. What if you get hacked and something happens? I have a little piece of paper that I have that's in a safe that says, here's the things I would do if I did get hacked and what I'd have to do. Delete your sensitive data and delete apps you don't use anymore. You need to get rid of those. Another thing to look at is actually taking a picture, taking a little sit down on your couch and going, does this app need actually access to my contacts? You'd be surprised. Most of the time when you download an app, it says, hey, can I have access to everything? And everyone just goes, sure. No, you do not want to give specific apps access to your contacts. It's really not needed. So kind of be mindful about those. And the last thing is backing up your phone. Make sure you back it up on a regular basis. If it does get compromised, you have a local backup that you can use later. And I know that was a lot.
So we don't have time to do it today, and we would do it if we were in person. But what we want you to do is we want you to go into your phone, and we want you to look in the area where it says access to voice and see how many apps you have that have given access to your voice. And here's my question. Does your flashlight on your phone really need a voice command capability? Yes, someone is listening. It's your phone. And that information can be relayed on to other entities. And if you go, how do they get away with that? If you took the time to read the 64 pages of acceptance material, it's actually in those small print areas where they say they have the right to use information gathered for improving the connectivity and usage of the phone. Well, there's no limit on what they can do with it when they do that. So again, it's about big data. How well do they protect it? It's not that Apple or the other manufacturers are stealing your data and doing something bad with it. It's how well is that information protected? Who's it resold to? All those questions that you actually have control over by controlling who's in and out of your phone. So last kind of thing that we want to talk about, and Henry can talk about, is how to really close out a session. How do you know when you're really done on that exchange?
So when you're doing any form of mobile or online banking or any financial service, the best thing you could possibly do is securely log out of that. All financial institutions now are required, and it shows when you log out of it, it pops up a window and says you have successfully logged out. That basically tells the other end of the server that the token is safely closed out. If you just close the app, you're actually not closing out that token that is basically from your mobile device over to the other end of that server that's doing the financial activity. So make sure that you're actually logging out. Another thing I always double check is go to your email service. I'm just going to use Google as for example. All the way at the bottom, it can tell you how many devices are logged in. What if there's one logged in from the Netherlands that you've never seen? If you ever see something like that, go and log out of all of your Gmail or any email service. That way you can log back in, and those people are now out. And I would always change your password if you do find that's happening.
So Henry's already started talking about it. We'll go to the next phase, which is detect. This is you being the super sleuth on the system you're using and knowing what's going on. And I call it being the ultimate consumer, knowing what's happening, what's going on around you. I would suggest you never truly openly trust the internet, period. It's not your friend, it's not your buddy, it's not a relative. It's a thing that exists to exchange information unreliably. And by unreliably, that means you ask it a question, it gives you an answer. That doesn't mean the answer is correct. It doesn't mean the answer is right. It doesn't mean the answer was what you wanted to know or really the question you asked. So you really have to be aware of what's going on around you. So in that detect mode, it's really important to understand what you're doing. So one of the things we like to give as an example under detect is, if you're purchasing online and you're using a credit card, highly endorse you get a credit card company who calls you every time there's a major purchase. Say it's $100. If it's over $100, the company calls you and says, did you make this purchase? And they hold that account until then. That is another layer of protection that's really, really good for you. I also recommend don't use multiple credit cards online. Use only one card. So if you have an incident online while using a credit card, you only have to cancel one card. You don't have to figure out which one was it I was using, which account was it for, and can I talk to the defensive side of that credit card company to help protect me? So there are several that are really, really good at this. They go to extreme to protect their consumer, and I think that's the best answer. We're going to jump ahead now to phishing, which is something you've all heard about. We're running out of time, Henry. So let's just kind of get what we can on phishing, and then we're going to kind of wrap it up here.
Okay, so again, basically the statistic here, I'm going to actually put something in the chat about ransomware, how to stop ransomware. But basically it is out of control, and phishing, we're really, really good at it. Don't ever fall for it. Use your, I can get back to this later. This is probably not that urgent. Next slide. So we want to talk about responding, I believe. So how to respond, you need to tell someone, right? This is really easy to say by saying, tell someone, you know, shutting off, disconnecting your internet and your Wi-Fi if you're having something, calling the actual card company yourself to ensure, and Bill talked a little bit about that, but making sure that you know what to do in a response manner. And then recover. Follow your cyber incident response plan, create a business continuity plan, use safe backups to resume operations, recover and rebuild them, analyze and improve your cybersecurity procedures, how to get back to normal, a ransomware. And I just popped in from CISA. It's the number one resource that I send or use for anybody talking about ransomware.
Oh, fantastic.
We'll kind of just jump to the end here, Kelly, and let you open up for questions.
Well, we don't have any questions right now.
Awesome.
That is what we call a thorough presentation when we don't get any questions.
That, or we've just bored everyone to tears and they're not sure what's next to do, or they're scared to death and just are afraid to ask because somebody might be listening in.
Well, you know, I know how to bore people to tears, and I'm pretty sure that didn't happen. So why don't we just go with no questions? Why don't we just jump into the chat box real quick and see if anything's in there? We'll start with from the top, and you'll see that there's the Capital Summit registration that Maureen put in, and some information on the micro grants and some other grants, the non-performing grants. There is the report identity theft SBA, if you believe you could have had some fraud, some other things related to SBA, and some of the things that are going on. And then Henry added a couple of things. One of them was the darkreading.com attacks. Could you comment on that a little bit, Henry?
Yeah, so that was the Uber and Lapsus. Lapsus is a group that's very popular, world-renowned, and this was a really good article that I read the other day about the contractor that MFA bombing. So I wanted the group to be able to understand a little bit more about a real-time actual thing that happened to Uber. How many people know what Uber is? Everyone will raise their hand. And what really to be an MFA, they also call it a fatigue attack instead of bombing. So that's another piece of terminology that they've been using. But I wanted to put that in there. And then I also just popped in. Also, one person had asked about the IRS and what they call a data security plan. And I just wanted to pop that in there as well. That you really need to make sure as a tax professional that you have your own WISP. And a WISP stands for, hold on again, trying to remember that one in my head. It stands for a Written Information Security Plan. And that's a really good thing for special businesses or any businesses to be aware of. So those are the ones I put in, and then a ransomware one as well.
So if you have any questions about this, you want a deeper dive, you can reach out to Henry or myself. There's a lot of good material online. I wouldn't say there's a lot of good on YouTube. I would say, though, there's some really good fundamental books out there about cybersecurity, the risk awareness, the risk manager's handbook. There's several out there that are just really well written. I'd go back to the basic statement we made at the very beginning. How important is what you're trying to protect should equal the amount of time you put in protecting it and the amount of money you use to protect it with. So really evaluate what you're trying to protect, how important it is to you. In some cases, it could be life-threatening. That's where you really need to go to those extremes. Plan on the worst case happening and practice for it and be ready when it does, because you never know in this world.
Absolutely.
Great.
And thank you for the opportunity, Kelly and Maureen, and anybody in the planet out there with this on Zoomy.
Hey,
this was fun for me.
Got a question.
Yes.
And I did read that article on Uber a couple of weeks ago. I read an article on it, and I can't remember what it was about. So you might have to, if we get a moment, fill us in on that. But first, a question. What should be the first thing you do if you believe your business network has been compromised? And that's from a perspective of a business owner and that of an employee.
This is really, really simple. It's going to start with, and I'm going to pre-position the answer. What does your checklist tell you to think about? So that's important. It's the pre-planning. You should know that question and think about it. And it really goes down to the simple, basic things that we started to do in that identify conversation, which is identify the things that are most important to you, that if something happens, you have to meet all sorts of new things to do. You have to shut down business, all that. So really, it's about understanding your crown jewels, what's most important to your company. It's about understanding where your employees were when the event took place so you can protect them and their identity and their information. And then the third thing is the continuity of how do I repair and recover. So really, it's that security plan that you're going to put into place. If you have questions about what that should look like, call us. We'll be glad to help you through it. But that's the answer to the question.
Great stuff. Okay. Well, that wraps us up for this week. We're going to be back next week. How about that? We're going to be back next week with number 134. As you see, we're going to be doing a little bit of discussion on the Capital Summit. Have a few people who aren't able to travel to Bishop and talk about some unique programs and a little bit about what we're going to talk about. Bill, Henry, great information. I'm going to rewatch this one as being a gentleman who thought he left his cell phone in a shopping cart, a physical shopping cart in a grocery store. It didn't turn out that way, but then I started to try to figure out what my risks were. Now I need to know those risks before I lose my phone for the first
Absolutely.
time.
That's correct.
Thank you very much for all of your time. You guys have a great day.
Absolutely wonderful experience. Thanks as always, Kelly. And those of you in Bakersfield, we'll see you soon.
Cheers.
Okay, well, thanks, gentlemen. And for Bill and Henry and our producer, Maureen Busherdang, I'm Kelly Bearden. We'll be back next week. Number 134. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye, everybody.